This video goes over EZFluence's powerful editing tools for field and field plans. The first thing that is very important to understand is that EZFluence will generate a field and field from an electronic compensator plan's fluence patterns. So as soon as you run EZFluence, you'll have an ecomp snapshot. And here's the fluence pattern for that ecomp. When you have the plan you want, meaning you have looked at the different plans, perhaps you renormalize if you want, then and only then should you generate a field and field, because EZFluence tries to match what you've achieved in your ecomp plan that you've selected when it generates the field and field. So now I'm going to generate a field and field. Now as soon as it's done calculating the field and field, you'll see that I have a new snapshot here. If you click in this Fluence drop-down and then use the up and down arrows, you can quickly compare the different snapshots. So here's the ecomp snapshot, here's the field and field snapshot. You see that the dose distribution changed somewhat, and you can see the effect on the DVH over here. Now right-click over the DVH and click BEV or for Beam's Eye View, or you can click the BEV tab over here. Here you can see I'm on my ecomp snapshot. I can switch to the field and field snapshot. And as you can see now there's the MLCs visible. You can easily scroll through your subfields using the mouse wheel, the same as clicking the buttons over here. And you can easily toggle between your fields by pressing Control Tab, the same as using these buttons over here. There are 6 ways to edit your field and field. First, you can renormalize the plan in the DVH tab using the max dose or dose to volume renormalization. Second, you can add or subtract MAR units from a subfield. Third, you can copy a subfield. Fourth, you can delete a subfield. Fifth, you can edit leaves directly. And sixth, you can edit dose directly on the CT slice. So I just undid those edits. Clicking on the field shows you exactly the part of the patient that is exposed by that pixel in the crosshair on the Fluence map. If you click and drag, then it continually updates. This makes it easy to associate the different parts of the fields with doses in the patient's body. The Fluence view, right here, shows a helpful overview of all your subfields at once. You can see the effective Fluence map corresponding with my different subfields. The max dose view uses this dose color wash range to show you the maximum dose encountered by each pixel in the Fluence map. Suppose you wanted to remove any 106% or higher dose in the plan. If your color wash is 100 to 106%, then the pink areas are where you might want to cover. So it's just a matter of finding a subfield that might be appropriate and editing the leaves. Now I'm going to undo that. We'll go over leaf editing a little bit later. Now let's go over each of the 6 methods of editing your field and field in detail. The first method, you can renormalize the plan in the DVH tab. Here are your 2 options. Suppose you renormalize to 105%. Now you can see my max dose is 105. By pressing enter, it applies the change, so 107 and enter, or pressing apply has the same effect. If you have a particular dose to volume you want to achieve, then you can type in that value, say D95 to 100%. Looks like it might be a little hot, but in any case, as you can see, you have a lot of control over how you normalize your plan. The structure used for normalization is the structure in the structure table with the target type. So if you want to change the target, you can simply change the target using this type dropdown. The field and field manual snapshots that automatically created when you do a manual change is automatically updated with a new normalization. So you can see if I go back and forth between snapshots, now I have one that has a normalization at 107.4, global hotspot. Okay, now the second method. Right-click, go to the Beam's Eye view. I'm going to make the leaves transparent so you can see the effects of this edit. The next one is adding or subtracting monuments from a subfield. Simply select the subfield you want to edit, and then click the plus or minus buttons to add or remove monuments. You can see how it only affects the part of the field that is exposed by the subfield. Of course, Control Z will undo these edits, Control Y will redo the edits. But this gives you very fine-grained control of how much dose is coming from a given subfield. Now, the third method is copying a subfield. You can see it says copy in the tooltip, copy and take 4 monunits from this aperture. That's based on your minimum monunits per segment. So if I hit copy, it tries to take 4 monunits away. In this case, it was able to because there was 7 monunits, but it is able to split it into 2 4 monunit subfields. But you can see that essentially my dose distribution was not changed. So now you have the opportunity to change the subfield that we just made. So you see these two subfields are exactly the same. So if you edit the leaves, now you're able to have some more fine-grained control. So it's a nice way to add a new subfield in case, for example, one subfield's monunit step was too high. Or if you wanted to have more control, for example, near the apex of the breast, by taking away some monunits from the first subfield and giving it to another subfield that you can edit. Now I'm going to come back to the previous manual snapshot before I created the extra subfields. So now I'm back to 5 subfields. Every time you do copy a subfield, it creates a new snapshot. That way it's easy to get back to where you were. So now the fourth method is deleting a subfield. This button deletes the currently selected subfield. I'm going to press Control Tab and come over to this field. I'm going to go to the fluence map so you can see the different fluence levels. Now if I go to the smallest subfield and click on it to see, for example, the dose distribution in this slice, when I delete the subfield, as always, you can immediately see the effect on the dose distribution. Again, you can use the snapshots to compare the two. Coming from here to there, you can easily see the differences. And if we go to the DVH, of course, and you click in the fluence snapshot and use the arrow keys, you can see the difference in the dose distribution between the two. So you see it seems like my coverage dropped down a little. If your DVH is getting too busy, you can click this C button to clear all the lines except for the one that you have currently selected. So you can see on the DVH what happened to your coverage of your PTV eval EZ structure, in this case, when you deleted that subfield. It's a very powerful way to determine the effect of deleting a subfield. So if you don't like a particular subfield in EZFluence, maybe the aperture is too small, for example, then this is an option you can try and see if you accept the consequences in the dose distribution. I'm going to come back to that first field and field. In fact, why don't I come back to the one that was automatically generated, just for a clean slate. Now the fifth method I've already shown a few times, but the fifth method is that you can edit leaves directly. To do this, select the subfield you want to edit. So suppose I want to change this subfield. Holding Control is the key to enabling edits in EZFluence. Holding Control and then clicking or dragging the left mouse button. So clicking affects one leaf. Dragging lets you draw where you want the leaves to go. Again, I'm pressing Control Z to undo what I just did. But you can see how the left bank is controlled by the left mouse button while holding Control. By clicking and dragging the right mouse button while holding Control, you can affect the right bank's leaves. Now I am back to where I was in the beginning. So suppose you don't like this part of the field being open the way it is. You can also hold down Control and hold down both mouse buttons, and it will close the leaves wherever you draw that. So you can close them outside the field, or you can close them in the field if you want. So suppose that EZFluence had just a tiny aperture like that. It's not common, but it does happen sometimes. You can easily go through and wipe it out. And immediately the dose is updated to show what happens in the dose distribution. So Control Z will undo, Control Y will redo. So you can just go back and forth and see what happens. I'm just going to undo until there's none left. Now remember, this max dose view is very useful for controlling hotspots, for example. So you can click on the parts of the field and see the hotspots that these fluence pixels are traversing through. So suppose that you don't like this hotspot here. Again, you can change the color wash range here, but this is just over 106. I could hold down Control and draw with the right mouse button to close it over that hotspot with the right bank. Turning on leaf transparency can also be useful because you can see the full effect and where you might actually want to open leaves, and the consequence of opening leaves bigger than where they are set by the optimizer, for example. So I'm going to turn that off and go back to Fluence. Now finally, the sixth method of editing your field and field. So this is editing the dose on the CT slice. The first thing to be aware is that if you simply click or drag, you can see the crosshair in the beam's eye view is updated to show me which part of the field irradiates where I'm clicking. So it's a very nice way to determine which part of the field is affecting a given part in the patient. While holding down the mouse button scrolling, you can see I'm scrolling through the different Fluence slices, the Fluence rows. Now, holding down Control, again, remember, Control is the key to enabling edits. So with Control held down, note that as you move over the image, a red arrow appears to show the ray of the Fluence pixel that would be edited by clicking. So again, that crosshair moves on the beam's eye view, and that red arrow shows you which side of which beam essentially is, or beamlet, is affecting where you are in the CT slice. Pressing Control Tab will let you go between the two fields, so you can see the beamlets that are affecting a part of the field from either side. When you press Control Tab, it's wherever that you have your mouse over is where that it tries to oscillate the fan beam projection that corresponds to the Fluence row that you're in. So that's important for knowing what the image is, how the image is going to change, because the image actually is aligned with a fan beam associated with a row of Fluence pixels. So as you make an edit, for example, editing the subfield and editing this leave, you can see the consequences all the way through the patient in the slice corresponding to this Fluence row. So I'm going to undo all those changes. So back to the red arrow. Now you simply point at where you want to change the dose, and holding Control and left click will reduce the dose there, and holding Control and right clicking will increase the dose there. So I just went back and forth a few times. In reality, what is happening, for example, when I reduce the dose, is that it takes 1% of the field's total MAR units and transfers that from the smallest subfield that exposes where I clicked to the next smallest subfield. So here I am exposed by the fourth subfield, as you can see in the crosshair in the beam's eye view. And if I click, it will take away, it looks like 2 MAR units, corresponds to 1% of the total MAR units for this field. And if I go to the next field, the next subfield, so there's 11 MAR units in this subfield, I come back. If I take away 2 MAR units from this subfield, it puts those 2 MAR units into the next subfield. So basically, the field reallocates MAR units from one subfield to the next whenever you do any of these dose edits on the CT slice. So suppose you had 105% in the apex. I'm going to just mess with it. So you can see if you go too far, then it would take away too many MAR units from the next subfield, and it won't let you do that. And in fact, if you have any subfields that are less than your minimum MAR unit per segment, then it will warn you when you export. So you know that you'll know if you made a subfield have too few MAR units. But suppose you had a 105% dose in the apex and you wanted to remove it. It's just a matter of potentially holding down Control and left clicking. I would actually recommend doing it one time from one side and another time from the other, just to make it as balanced as possible. And then checking to see if there was any consequences anywhere else in the field. It looks like there's some other places that need more edits. Obviously I just blew up my dose distribution by adding a ton of MAR units just in that apex subfield. But in any case, I think you get the idea. So essentially it's just a matter of pointing and clicking either left to reduce dose or right to increase dose, and using the subfield, or rather the field, using Control Tab to go between the fields that makes the most sense to edit for a particular location. So as you can see, the manual editing tools in EZFluence give you great control over your field and field. And the immediate dose updates, as well as undo and redo functionality, makes it really easy to make any necessary edits very quickly.